Ukraine tension. World leaders meet in Washington and Moscow in hopes of finding a diplomatic solution. Picking up pieces. Democrats still intend to proceed with the Build Back Better agenda. We're on Capitol Hill. Synodal way. Bishops issue an initial report on next year's global gathering at the Vatican. And good vibrations. A television first for Pope Francis. We'll explain. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, February 7th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of St. Blessed Pius IX. I'm Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden welcomed the new Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, to the White House today. The two international leaders came together to discuss key topics like the standoff over Ukraine. Russia claims that it's not going to attack its neighbor, but the U.S. believes an invasion could happen any day. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, President Biden held a bilateral meeting with the German Chancellor today, followed by a news conference where the president emphasized that despite how the media portrays it, Germany is completely, totally, and thoroughly reliable.
As the threat of war hangs over Europe,
I'm delighted to have the Chancellor here today.
Today at the White House, President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz display a show of resolve and commitment, a signal, it is hoped, to Russia that the West is unified.
Germany is one of America's closest allies. We're working on lockstep to further deter Russian aggression in Europe.
Germany has faced criticism over its response to the Ukraine standoff. They've refused to send Ukraine any weapons, but they are sending more troops to Lithuania, which is farther north.
We see the number of Russian troops along the Ukrainian border, and that is a serious threat to European security.
At a news conference today, the lingering question remains, can war be avoided?
If Russia makes a choice to further invade Ukraine, we are jointly ready, and all of NATO is ready.
How are you? Fine, just fine. How are you?
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Moscow trying to de-escalate tensions. And in Ukraine, the foreign minister there calls on Russia to back off.
Single withdrawal does not mean de-escalation. So we need to see that everything that has been amassed along our border in the last year is steadily being withdrawn.
Meanwhile, the First Lady spoke to community college leaders earlier today, saying she's disappointed that the proposal for free community college was taken out of the now stalled Build Back Better legislation. Jill Biden continues to teach at Northern Virginia Community College. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, it has been nearly 2 months since Democratic Senator Joe Manchin said that he would not support the $5 trillion Build Back Better Act. Now, congressional Democrats want to bring it back in smaller pieces. That plan is getting mixed reviews among Republicans. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
Is the Build Back Better Act dead? Not according to Democrats, who say some of the popular items like lowering prescription drugs need to pass, along with giving parents a child tax break.
When we talk about inflation, people say, oh, you're spending money on this or that. This is completely paid for. Not only is it paid for, it will, in fact, reduce the national debt.
Progressives are pushing for a March 1st deadline. Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries believes it can be done.
We're not frustrated. I don't believe that Build Back Better is dead. The Senate will have to work through its dynamics.
Some of the items Democrats want: climate change initiatives, lowering drug prices, and expanding health care coverage. But a roadblock remains. Senator Joe Manchin nixed the massive $5 trillion bill back in December. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's confident he can win him over.
And we're fighting hard for Build Back Better. There are lots of provisions in that bill that are very important, many of which Senator Manchin supports, such as, say, drug pricing. And so we are continuing to work on it.
Senator Manchin says any new bill must be a lot smaller.
The Build Back Better, as it has been presented over the last 7, 8, 9 months, that bill no longer will exist.
But Republicans say,
my personal opinion is Build Back Better is as dead as fried chicken and good riddance.
hey, if they want to pass this, bring it out one at a time. Let the American people know what's in it. You know, when you put these $2 trillion bills together, or $3 trillion, whatever they are, we don't even know what's in it, much less the American people.
Congressman Jeff Fortenberry agrees some components of the original bill could pass, but debate must take place.
It was wrong from the start. It's good that it fails. Now maybe there's some components that can receive some due consideration.
Senate Democrats don't know when they will consider a new bill. That's because Senator Ben Ray Lujan from New Mexico is still recovering from a stroke and won't return to Washington anytime soon. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining me now is Joel Griffith, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Joel, welcome back. Always so great to see you. As we just heard, it seems Build Back Better is back, but in a different form with smaller pieces. Your thoughts, and do you think, Joel, this strategy will help get the bill across the finish line?
Yeah, well, I wasn't one of the ones that thought this was going to mean its ultimate demise. We know that there is a big push within the Senate, within especially the left wing, to push through as much of that Build Back Better program as possible. And we know what it's chock full of. It's full of more deficit spending, and more importantly, it's full of transforming the American economy. There's a big part of the Green New Deal that is in that package that would drive up electricity costs, drive up manufacturing costs for the American consumer. And at a time when so many families are suffering with these skyrocketing costs of living, regardless of what that spending would be focused on, to print more, to borrow more, to spend more when American families are facing such high inflation is extremely imprudent.
Yeah, and I want to jump off of that. As we talked about before, you know, the price of just about everything has gone up these days. In fact, gas prices are up 8 cents this week after hitting a 7-year high last week. Joel, do you think we'll get any relief at the pump anytime soon? And what do you think it's going to take?
Well, look, oil prices, of course, very volatile, but there's no doubt Americans are feeling the pinch. If you're filling up your minivan in parts of California, you're paying almost $150 to fill up your minivan. And regardless of what the short-term fluctuations are, this Biden administration from day one has declared war on fossil fuels. The very first thing the Biden administration did was kill the Keystone XL pipeline that would have ensured an abundant flow of affordable oil coming in from Canada. And the administration has tried to ban and restrict drilling all across the country on federal properties. And we know that long term, that means we're going to have less affordable, we're going to have less abundant fossil fuels, and that is going to drive up the cost for American families to heat their homes, to cool their homes, to travel. And if you're in the manufacturing business sector, it's going to mean it's going to be a lot more expensive to manufacture goods here in the United States.
You know, something else that's up, home prices. And according to Zillow, those home prices could increase by more than 16% this year. Good, I guess, if you want to sell your home. But for those looking to purchase, especially those first-time home buyers, not exactly the best market. Your thoughts?
Home prices year over year are up 25%. If you're a typical family just trying to get by, let's say you've got a husband and wife making $100,000 per year, you're finding that in many parts of the country, 40% of your income is going to go towards the mortgage payment alone. These are all-time record home prices, not just in terms of the actual dollar value, but in terms of what it costs to get to buy a home relative to one's income. And a big part of that problem has been caused by the federal government subsidizing the mortgage industry, subsidizing the real estate sector. And I know some of the brokers and the builders have been happy with that, but American families are finding it very difficult to buy their first homes. And once families have a child or two, a lot of families are finding that they have to stay in a cramped apartment or a cramped condo a lot longer because they can no longer buy a home with a decent yard and room for their growing families.
Yeah, very tough. I don't want to forget about this. On Friday, the January jobs report was released, and it showed 467,000 new jobs added, topping expectations. Joel, how significant is this, and are you encouraged by those numbers?
Well, month to month, you get a lot of noise in the jobs numbers. Those numbers were, anytime you see jobs created, that's a positive. But what we know over this last year and a half since the pandemic started is we have several million people that no longer are working. And more importantly, relative to prior to the pandemic, we have nearly 3 million people that have left the workforce altogether. People that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that have decided they're no longer even looking for a job. And all of us have realized this. When you go to a restaurant, you go to a bar, you go to a store, I think we've all noticed that the service has declined. That's because it's been a lot harder to even find people that want to work. And government, another situation where government has caused the problem. First, they criminalized businesses from operating. Then the government paid people not to work. And now you still have rolling school shutdowns and childcare facilities that aren't back up and running. And that's thanks to a lot of absurdly draconian COVID policies that across much of the country still have not been lifted. But I encourage people, look at places like Florida, Georgia, Texas. Those economies are booming. People are back to work. But it's really places like California, New York, and Illinois that are holding the rest of the country back right now because those restrictions in many places remain in place.
All right, Joel, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. Always appreciate your analysis.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Coming up, an update on the global gathering next year at the Vatican. And sad news regarding a 5-year-old stuck in a well in Morocco. A funeral was held in Morocco for a young boy who did not survive falling into a well. The 5-year-old boy was trapped 100 feet underground for 4 days. Last week, rescue teams reached him on Saturday but were not able to save his life. His ordeal drew international attention. Morocco's king praised the responders and joined in prayers of condolence. Lawmakers in Spain have passed a measure targeting pro-lifers. Reports say anyone who reaches out to a pregnant mother outside of an abortion facility could face jail time. Meantime, simply praying outside of an abortion clinic is also set to be criminalized. The bill's supporters say that it will prevent women from being harassed. Staying in Spain now, the government is set to open its first investigation into sexual abuse allegations in the Catholic Church. Lawmakers also are moving toward opening an official investigation into the matter. The country's bishops have encouraged victims to report allegations to their diocese, and they say the government probe is not necessary. The Vatican's global gathering called the Synod on Synodality does not take place until next year, but the preparations are well underway. The group organizing the event has released its first update. It says it is, quote, very pleased with the progress so far. The preparations have started with officials seeking input at the local level. The reflections on the life and state of the church will take 2 years, ending with the global gathering in Rome in October of 2023. Joining us now from Rome is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you. What more can you tell us about this update?
Thank you, Tracy. Well, today, Cardinal Mario Grech, the General Secretary for the Synod of Bishops, gave an update on the global synodal path. The processes started back in October 2021, and it produced quite some controversy among Vatican observers. Some immediately voiced concerns that it could be an internationalization of the German synodal path, which has been ongoing for more than 2 years now. Many fear a schism for the German church, as just this weekend the German synodal path voted on 4 issues regarding sexuality against current church moral teachings. A majority of the bishops and lay people participating in the process voted, for example, in favor of allowing blessings of same-sex relationships and a change of the catechism and its stance on contraception. Other issues discussed during the German synodal path are also highly controversial, such as married men and women to become priests and such as same-sex marriage. As things stand, the participants of the meetings of the synodal path will vote on these issues, and it is not quite clear what will happen if these votes call for a change of current church teachings, but it might widen the gap between the official German Catholic Church and its faithful, at least those still attending Sunday Mass regularly.
So, Andreas, is the global synodal path then seeking to introduce the same process that we're seeing in Germany for the whole church?
Well, on the global level, responsibles for the synodal process have constantly stressed that it is a process without a pre-mediated outcome. The first phase is a period of listening in order to better understand the needs and concerns of the global church. Based on the issues raised in this phase, an agenda will be drafted. I've met some people involved in this process, and off the record, they said that they really want the process to be guided by the Holy Spirit. The idea of synodality finds its biblical prototype in the Council of Jerusalem. We can read about it in the Acts of the Apostles. The disciples discussed whether or not the Christian faith is meant for other peoples than just the Jews as well. Tracy, listening to the local church, the faithful around the world could also be a very positive thing. The bishops and their faithful in Africa, Asia, or Latin America might have other concerns than those in the West.
And Andreas, I'm wondering, do we know how the church in those regions are responding to the global synodal path?
Well, in a press release issued today, the General Secretariat for the Synod of the Bishops, which organizes this worldwide process, said that 98% of all dioceses have appointed a person responsible for the synodal path on a local level. This means that there is a huge interest to participate in it. The global perspective of this process is very important. Faithful in Africa or in Asia struggle with completely different topics than those in the West, as I already mentioned. And the German agenda that we've just touched upon is of little interest to the millions of Catholics in countries such as Nigeria, India, or Pakistan. For example, I interviewed Cardinal Kutz from Pakistan just a few weeks ago when he was here in Rome. He's also part of the Commission for the Synodal Path. And he said that his faithful are living their faith in a society where they're a very small minority, living in constant danger of persecution. A Polish bishop shared with me that he's looking forward to the process as he will focus with his flock on how to improve in bringing Jesus to the people, a path toward new evangelization. In any case, I believe Pope Francis is right to call each and everyone to pray for this process.
Well, Andreas, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Up next, why Pope Francis says new beginnings are always possible for those who have God. Plus, a regal milestone for Queen Elizabeth II. In London, ceremonial gun salutes for Queen Elizabeth II as she becomes the first British monarch to reach a platinum jubilee. The artillery salute at the Tower of London today was one of 3 across the UK to honor the Queen's 70th year as monarch. Her father, King George VI, passed away on February 6, 1952. Tradition holds that the anniversary is marked one day after ascension to the throne. A former Anglican bishop is now a member of the Catholic Church. Peter Forster, the former Anglican Bishop of Chester, was received into the Catholic Church in Scotland last year. He is the 4th Church of England clergy member to become Catholic within the past year. And joining us now is Luke Coppen, Europe editor of Catholic News Agency. Luke, welcome back. It's great to see you. So what is drawing these former Anglican leaders to the Catholic faith? Do you know? And also, is this something that we expect to continue?
Well, that's the big question. Why is this happening? Is it just a coincidence that these bishops are becoming Catholics all at once, or is there genuinely a movement behind it? Now, we can't really answer that question with certainty at the moment because only one of the 4 who have become Catholic in the past year has really spoken about his reasons for doing so, and that's the former Bishop Michael Nazir Ali, who's now a Catholic priest in the Ordinariate. He's the only one of the 4 to have given a really full explanation of what was drawing him to the Catholic Church. The latest figure to become a Catholic is very interesting. He's Dr. Peter Forster, the former Bishop of Chester. What's notable about him is that he doesn't come from where you would normally expect a bishop from the Church of England to become a Catholic, i.e. the Anglo-Catholic wing of the Church of England. In fact, he comes from the evangelical branch. And he's the second to do so after Bishop Nazir Ali. So you have to ask there whether somehow the appeal of the Catholic Church is perhaps shifting and including not just those who are formed in Catholic spirituality, in Anglo-Catholicism, but also those from an evangelical background. There's something there that's also drawing these quite senior figures to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, very, very intriguing. Something else I'm going to talk about, new developments regarding the Latin Mass in the Archdiocese of Westminster in London. What more can you tell us about that?
So Cardinal Nichols, the Archbishop of Westminster, sent a letter to the Latin Mass Society of England and Wales last month, in which the Cardinal confirmed that it would no longer be possible for traditional rite confirmations to take place within the Archdiocese. Now, this has become a real institution within the Archdiocese because since 2004, the Archdiocese has provided an auxiliary bishop once a year who would preside at these confirmations in the traditional rite. So there's a really established phenomenon there, and it's no longer going to happen. And that's as a result, not just of the Pope's document, Traditionis Custodes, but also the responsa, answering questions about the document that came from the Congregation for Divine Worship in Rome, which addressed this question of the confirmations and gave a negative verdict on them and said it wasn't possible.
Luke, I want to turn to some other news. Yesterday kicked off Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee, marking her 70 years on the throne. Can you talk to us about the significance of that and also the festivities taking place?
Yes, I mean, this is a really important event in the life of the UK because this has never happened before. The Queen Elizabeth II is the first monarch ever to have reigned for 70 years. She's making history with this. The actual event has, as you say, has taken place on February the 6th. That's when she reached this landmark. But the big celebrations are coming in June. There's going to be a 4-day public holiday in which there's all kinds of events, including parades, the lighting of beacons. There's also going to be a service of Thanksgiving in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, at which there'll be an opportunity to thank God for her reign. And I imagine that there'll be Catholic representation at that event. And also, it's worth pointing out that the Jubilee is also being celebrated by many in the Catholic Church in England and Wales. Cardinal Nichols himself was tweeting yesterday and congratulating the Queen on her reaching this milestone. And he was also as well praising her for the Christian faith that she's displayed in public life over those 70 years, because that's been a very, very important thing for Christians in this country, to know that the Queen is personally committed to the faith and that it's helped to support her through the vicissitudes of her life.
Yeah, and 70 years, that's absolutely incredible. Luke, before I let you go, what else are you following?
The whole country, of course, is talking about Boris Johnson and about the latest troubles that he has. I mean, you might ask, why is this of interest to Catholics? Well, I think partly because Boris Johnson is, in fact, himself a baptised Catholic. That became clear after he had a wedding at Westminster Cathedral, the Mother Church of England and Wales, last year. That is an unusual thing in itself, to have a Catholic Prime Minister of Britain. He's the first. So he is really on the ropes at the moment politically because of rule-breaking parties that were held in his residence of Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns, and there's a great deal of public outrage over this, and people are waiting to see whether he's going to survive this politically.
Yeah, that's definitely causing a lot of controversy. We know you'll continue to follow that, and we will as well. Luke, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tracy.
Now, Pope Francis offers a solution for the times when we feel disappointment and emptiness.
E dico che Gesù sale proprio sulla barca di Simone.
At a Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says Christ wants to enter our emptiness and will take away feelings of futility. Pope Francis also notes new beginnings are always possible for those who stay close to God. He urged the faithful not to give up when we cast our nets, but initially do not catch anything. Finally, tonight, Pope Francis has achieved a new first, an appearance as a TV talk show guest.
E io non me la cavo, non sono tanto santo, io ho bisogno dei rapporti umani.
The Holy Father appeared on a popular Italian talk show last night. Pope Francis expressed his advocacy on behalf of migrants. He also invited prayers for himself, saying, quote, if some of you don't pray because you don't believe, don't know how, or can't, at least send me good thoughts and good vibes. Well, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.